the first data about genetic diversity, those are the 4 populations from the French coast. And what we can see here is the number of individuals that have been analyzed, the number of genotypes that have been found within each single population, and this is the ratio between number of genotypes and number of individuals. And the first thing we can notice here is that the 2 populations from Carteau and Brusque have a very high number of genetically different individuals, almost equal to 1, while the population from Arc has very low number of genotypes. Only about 50% of shoots that have been collected represented different genotypes. And also the mean number of alleles per locus is very low. It's low also in Brusque, but it's very low also in Arc. So the 2 populations from the Berre Lagoon have the lower number of genotypes over the total number of individuals. And this is the first thing to take into consideration. If we look then at the heterozygosity values, this is just look at these 2 values, the observed heterozygosity and the expected heterozygosity. This is the heterozygosity we would expect only according to the number of alleles and number of loci that have been analyzed. And this is what we really observe. Okay? So the values are pretty high in comparing with also other populations with the seagrasses in general, suggesting that there are not high pressure against sexual reproduction within the lagoon. Sexual reproduction seems to be very active. Also if meadows are isolated, there is not a very clear effect of inbreeding within the meadows in the lagoon. And the values in the lagoon are comparable with the values outside the lagoon. So there's a high value of all 4 populations and no significant differences between the observed and the expected heterozygosity. So there is low inbreeding, meaning high sexual reproduction. And this is another value that is showing that populations instead are very distinct. So the gene flow is very low. Populations are isolated. This is a value ranging from 0 to 1. A 0.25 is quite high. So that means that populations are pretty well isolated. Gene flow is very low. If we compare this value in the Berre Lagoon and the French population with 2 of the Italian populations, Livorno and Civitavecchia, that are why I didn't put Ischia, because Ischia there were many more individuals. Comparing the value was more difficult. But the 2 populations that were more comparable with those 4 populations from the French coast are Livorno and Civitavecchia. We can see here that the GN value are comparable, is 0.9, 0.9, 0.8, are even higher in the 2 open sea populations from the French coast. But the Arc Lagoon, again, has very low value, also compared with the Arc site, within the lagoon, has very low value also compared with the Italian populations. And what is striking here is to notice that the observed heterozygosity in Arc, in respect to expected heterozygosity, the real heterozygosity of the Arc population is much higher than the others. So the ratio between observed and expected is higher in Arc. Now, why that? One of the possibilities that the genetic population genetic theories can claim for that is that there is an advantage of heterozygosity. So there could be a kind of adaptation within the Berre Lagoon in the population of Arc of few individuals that are with very enhanced heterozygosity that are adapted to live in the conditions that the meadow experience within the lagoon. And they keep this heterozygosity because the meadow is isolated from the others. And how can we say that the meadow is isolated? Let's look at the next part of the presentation. This is the level of gene flow. So this is the pairwise differentiation of the populations. And we can see that the Berre population and the Arc population are very well connected. The FST value is low. But, for example, the population from Brusque is very well differentiated from the others. And the population from Carteau is also more differentiated than between the population within the lagoon. So to be more clear, let's see here, it was a little confusing before, but this is clear. So this is a PCA analysis, principal coordinates analysis. We can see here clearly that the 2 populations from the lagoon, that Berre and Arc here, are differentiated from Carteau, and they are even more differentiated from Brusque. So they are isolated, and they are pretty well connected each other, but isolated from the populations from the other sides. And this is the same representation about considering all the individuals and not only the average of the population. This is another way, this is a factorial correspondence analysis, another way to represent the same result. Again, the populations from the Berre Lagoon are very well intermingled here in the top left of the graph, while the Carteau population is pretty close to the population in the Berre Lagoon, but the Brusque population is pretty far. What happens if we add, no, that's again, sorry, before that, this is the result of the assignment test. So what we do here is to try to look at in which way individuals can collected one population can be assigned to another population from the genetic point of view. That is an indication of the migration between populations. We can see here that Brusque population is all individuals collected in Brusque can only be assigned to Brusque. All individuals collected in Carteau can only be assigned in Carteau. But there is a small but significant level of migration between the two populations within the Berre Lagoon, that is Arc and Berre. So few individuals from Berre can be assigned to Arc and vice versa. If we add the Italian population to the geographic representation here, we can see that the French population cluster together, while the Italian population cluster together in this other side of the graph, meaning that there is a clear decline at the level of probably of the Liguri cost between the French cost and the Italian cost. And this is more evident here if we add also the last Italian population, the southern one, that is the population from Ischia, where decline here is even more evident in the middle of the Tyrrhenian Sea. If some of you knows a little bit about the genetic structure of marine organisms along the Tyrrhenian coast, this is quite usual. There is a kind of decline in the middle of the Tyrrhenian Sea that is also very evident in Posidonia, it's another seagrass, where it's very clear to see how populations from the south of Rome, let's say, and population from north of Rome, they belong to very clearly separated genetic groups. So concluding, this is what we saw before. So low clonal diversity means higher exposure to environmental changes, and population from within the Berre Lagoon, particularly Arc, have lower number of alleles, lower genotypic diversity in respect to the others, and this is a potential problem for the persistence of the meadow in the future. While the heterozygosis is high in all populations, and there are no signs of inbreeding, suggesting that sexual reproduction is active within the lagoon. And this is instead a positive sign, because that means the populations have the capability and the potential to react and to reproduce. Looking at the gene flow, populations within the Berre Lagoon are isolated from the ones in the open sea, but are closer to the Carteau population. And a decline seems to be present between Brusque and the other three French populations, reflecting patterns of gene flow. And this is also important to notice, because if there are restoration plants planned in the lagoon, then it's probably better to collect shoots in populations that are already connected genetically to the population within the lagoon, without altering the genetic diversity, without risking to collect from meadows that are adapted to completely different conditions. So it's better then to consider for reforestation plants the collection from the Carteau population to transplant within the lagoon, inside the lagoon, and not, for example, from other sites that are far away from the lagoon. And then at the end, that clustering among all populations reflect very nicely the geographic position of the different populations. And then I would like to thank again GPREB for the support, and thank you for your attention.